Hi and welcome to today's episode, which is all about satisfying a viewer request for some plant-based chocolate chip oatmeal cookies. I recently had a comment on the savoury cereal bars video asking if I had a recipe for chocolate chip oatmeal cookies. I said I didn't at the time because I didn't, but I said leave it with me, I'll see what I can do for you. So this video, Mara's 26, is for you. You don't really hear of oatmeal cookies in the UK, partly because oatmeal isn't a thing here. We'd call that porridge. You can get oat-based cookies, don't get me wrong, like hobnobs, for example, are an oat cookie. So I thought, I'll look in my American cookbooks, see what I've got. I looked in the James Beard American Cookery, didn't see anything, and then remembered the Fanny Farmer baking book. I grew up with this cookbook and the James Beard one. This was from, I think, 84. So as long as I remember baking, we've had this one around. This is one of those cookbooks that I don't really read it. I just go in for recipes. But when I was looking for the oatmeal one, I saw one for banana crisp cookies that sounded quite interesting. So I might make those next. Who knows? Obviously this isn't a vegan recipe, so I will be using all plant-based ingredients. It's the 21st of February and it's currently 11 degrees in Leeds. We're having a bit of a heat wave. It's been cold. So the house isn't the warmest, so I've had to do the microwave trick on the butter. Hopefully it's soft enough. So I don't forget to tell you, the oven's preheating at 180 C, which is 350 Fahrenheit. Apparently most American ovens aren't fan assisted, which mine is. I'm gonna leave it at the 180 and I might drop it to 160 if they start looking too brown on the outside. This is 114 grams of vegan butter that I've softened, half a cup or 4 ounces. This is 200 grams of golden caster sugar. I'm using golden because that's what I've got. Feel free to use white. You do want a caster sugar though, ideally, rather than granulated because it's a smaller grain. So we'll scatter that on and then we're going to cream that together. I'm going to try and cream it with a dough hook. I just can't be bothered getting the cake beater out. So I'm just kind of pouncing it down just to make sure I've got no solid big bits of butter or anything. At some point I think I'm going to do a video where I test baking things. For example, is it important to use room temperature butter rather than melted, sieving flour versus not, that kind of thing, just to see if there's any time saving that can be achieved. In my little glass here I've got 2 chia eggs. This is 2 tablespoons of ground chia seeds mixed with 3 tablespoons of boiling water. I'm going to gloop that in. I'm going to do a teaspoon or so of vanilla extract. I'm going to beat this together until fluffy. So the chia mixture is there as an egg replacement. You can either buy ground flax or ground chia, or do what I do, which is buy seeds and then grind it down in a coffee grinder. 1 teaspoon of seeds will give you a tablespoon of ground. Try and get a whisk in for a minute, just to see if I can get it a little bit airier. Well, this might not be the stiffest whisk. Now I need 1.5 cups of oats. I'm using jumbo oats, because these have got a really great texture on them. And in this recipe, it states not the instant kind. I don't know why. Perhaps they don't retain good texture. So that is 130 grams. And we're gonna beat those in with the wet ingredients. I'm gonna push this to the side for a second while I do the dry ingredients. The original recipe says flour. I'm gonna assume she means all-purpose flour. Plain flour. I'm gonna go a bit left field and use brown flour, because why not get some extra healthfulness? Plus, wholemeal flour's got the nice kind of flaky bits of bran, so you like a nice bit of texture in there as well. So I'm gonna go with a strong brown bread flour. Again, I need 1.5 cups of the brown flour. And you'll notice I'm using a spoon to fill up the measures rather than scooping the measures into the bag. That is because you're gonna get compression, 225 I suppose. Be precise with baking and all that. I'm gonna add 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder and 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. I'm gonna do 1/2 teaspoon of, oh, that's a teaspoon, Rachel. Oh no, I've used the wrong spoon. I thought today was going too well. This might not work, but I really don't want to throw out all that flour. So any issues with this recipe are my fault. The main problem will be that they taste a bit tangy, but that's fine. 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Call it chaotic for a reason, yeah? And then I'm gonna add 1.5 teaspoons of mixed baking spices. Or yeah, I'm gonna do a teaspoon because I don't want them to be spice cookies. I want them to be more chocolatey. So this is things like cinnamon, allspice, cloves, nutmeg, all kinds of things. I did these for the mulled wine cookies. I'm gonna whisk that together. I really hope these are okay. Doing it in 2 separate bowls is just a good way to ensure everything's well mixed before you chuck it in the wet mixture. We'll drop that into the butter mixture, give it a brief stir, and then I'm going to add in some milk. Switch back to the dough hook. And then I'm adding 120 mils of oat milk, which is 1/4 cup. So that was 60 mils of milk, not 120. And then I will carefully work that in. So I'm going to add in a cup of toasted walnut pieces. I think it was about 100 grams of walnuts that I toasted in the air fryer. I use the Kirkland Signature semi-sweet chocolate chips because these are accidentally vegan. You've got cocoa mass, cocoa paste, sugar, soy lecithin and vanilla. Let's just chuck them all in. That was 175 grams of chocolate chips. The original recipe is oatmeal and raisin, so I hope a cup was all right of the chocolate chips. Now, the recipe says drop the dough by heaping teaspoonfuls. I do not have the capacity for that because a teaspoonful is that amount. We'll do like tablespoonfuls. I can get 2 trays in my oven in one go, so we'll see how much I can get on a tray. I suspect I'm gonna have to do another batch off camera, but I'm also making bao at the moment and my dough needs to be worked on. Didn't really think about the timings there very well, but so it says 2 inches apart. Scooping a bit up and knocking it onto the sheet. It is very sticky, so I'm not even going to attempt rolling it. These are going to be rustic. Although, because I had that little mishap with the rising agents, I might just end up with a big sheet of one singular cookie, like a blanket. You are covered in dust, but the lens is fine. It's a miracle. So that's the first tray of cookies done. I will get those in the oven. And these need to bake for about 12 minutes or until the edges are brown. Rising agent dramas aside, it's a pretty easy recipe to do. That's what I've got left. For now, I'm just going to cover the bowl with a plate, just so it doesn't dry out too much. Once they're baked, I'm going to pull them out onto cooling racks, and then I'll wait for them to cool fully. I'm going to finish up my other video, and then we'll do some eating. But if the cookies taste anywhere near as good as the batter tastes, we're onto a winner. See you soon. How's about that for a plate of joy? Cookies. Yum, 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 yum. It's finally time to eat some cookies. It is now 9:10. It's been a while since I've done 2 videos in a day, and oh boy, am I running on fumes. But it was worth it because the bao were mwah. I'll show you the buns. So here's my delicious bao. They were an absolute delight, let me tell you. I expected the cookies to spread, you know, because the recipe had said leave 2 inches between each one. So I anticipated that they were going to flatten and spread, which they clearly haven't. They look pretty much the same as they did going in. Whether that's because of the whole wheat flour, maybe, I don't know, maybe that holds its structure more so than a white flour would do. So if I try and snap one in half, so you can see the texture inside. Yeah, very tasty looking indeed. Let's have a go. That little bit of spice that we put in, because it's adding something but not dominating. You can still taste the chocolate. That's lush. They also taste wholesome, apart from them being sweet and buttery and delicious. There's also an extra little something there, which I suspect is partly the walnuts but also the flour. They are lovely as is, but next time I make them, I think I'm going to cut at least 1/4 of the sugar. They're very sweet, and I don't think it needs to be. Yeah, maybe take out 50 grams of sugar. They're delicious as is, don't get me wrong, but they could tolerate less sugar, which means they're cheaper and a bit better for you. The outside's nice and crispy, but then inside much softer. I think the recipe said 12 minutes, which is what I put them in for. But when I took them out, they were still quite soft, so I put them in another 5. And then I think I might have done another 5 after that. When you pull them out, just push them. And if it feels too soft, just give them another 5, as long as they're not going too dark. If they are going too dark too quickly, just drop it down to 160. I did think maybe I should have, but I was in the middle of making bao and I don't think it's hurt them at all. I reckon this is going to be one of those recipes that I keep playing around with and trying different combinations. I just thought, oh, it'd be nice to try it with like brown butter, you know, like toasted butter. I think that would be incredible for the flavour. Toasting the oats would be really nice to try because that'll give it an extra toasty element to it. And use brown sugar, like dark brown soft sugar. I think it's worth trying with melted butter instead of the softened butter because, especially using whole wheat flour, it's got that kind of rustic texture anyway. And the purpose of creaming flour and butter, partly it's to coat each grain of sugar in fat so that it disperses well. And there's a bit more science to it than that. I can't think what it is. But also, apparently it helps baked goods get fluffy. We've used baking powder and baking soda, so that is going to give it lift anyway. I think the time spent messing around softening the butter, it would at least be worth a go at just melting the butter. So start your recipe with sugar in the bowl, pour over melted butter, stir it, and then add in the chia, oats, etc, etc. I don't think it's going to have a massive impact on the texture at all. And if you do melted butter, then you can do quite easily brown butter. Yeah, I think it's worth a go. Thanks once again to the commenter for putting the idea in my head. I like getting viewer suggestions because it means I don't have to think about anything other than how am I going to do that. Sometimes it's coming up with the ideas that is the tiring part. If you've got any requests, suggestions, that kind of thing, always feel free to leave a comment, and if it's within my wheelhouse, I will do something for you. I'm going to make myself a nice big cup of tea, have a couple of cookies and sit down, relax, because the fatigue and pain are starting to kick off a bit. That's what I get for doing too much work in a day. But anyway, I just need to say hello and a great big thank you to my community on Patreon. Their financial contribution every month helps me buy ingredients and keep the channel afloat, which is honestly beyond words of how lovely that is for me. If you'd like to show a bit of financial appreciation and get access to some bonus content, I'll leave the link to my Patreon down in the description for you. If you're on the lookout for lots more delicious plant-based recipes, I've got a back catalogue that's, I don't know, 150 odd videos at least by now. And then if you like the video and subscribe to the channel, tap the bell icon, you'll get an alert as soon as I publish a new one. While you're waiting for the next video, have a look at this.